Welcome to the Church Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Don Hicks. The focus of this podcast is to provide coaching, equipping, and strengthening of church leaders who will lead and equip the believers for the work of ministry, for building up the body of Christ. This will enable healthy leaders and healthy churches to flourish and thrive as they carry out the Great Commission, the Great Commandment, in the power of the Holy Spirit. Welcome to Church Leadership in Focus, the podcast designed to equip pastors and ministry leaders with practical, biblical, and leadership-focused insights for building a healthy and sustainable churches. Scripture tells us in Proverbs 11:14, where there is no guidance, a people fall, but in the abundance of counselors, there is safety. My hope is that every conversation on this podcast serves as wise counsel for leaders who carry both spiritual and organizational responsibility. I'm your host, Don Hicks, and today we're talking about something many pastors were never trained in seminary or any type of school, yet something that has a direct impact on trust, credibility, and long-term church health. We're talking about financial systems, operational integrity, stewardship, and why these leadership issues not simply are administrative tasks, but they become a core part of integrity. Jesus reminds us in Luke 16:10, one who is faithful in the very little is also faithful in much. How we manage finances, processes, systems reflects our faithfulness as leaders. My guest today is Mark Brown, president of Orange Sock. Mark works in the payment technology, financial systems, operational excellence, helping organizations, including churches, handle money with integrity, clarity, and accountability, and the list goes on. Today, on the post, you'll be able to read much more about Mark, and there will be information to go to his website to see how he might be able to help you. But Mark also is a financial sponsor of Church Leadership in Focus. And today's conversation, we'll talk about healthy financial systems, what they look like in churches, and other things in the area of leadership. Proverbs 16:11, a just balance and scales are the Lord's. Operational integrity isn't just good leadership, it's biblical leadership. Mark, I'm grateful you're here. Welcome to Church Leadership in Focus.
Hey, Don. Welcome. Glad to be here.
Well, sort of in our pre-talk, I got to know more about you. Everybody knows Rob. He's our engineer, producer, high-tech advisor.
Super talkative, too. That's why. He's super social.
I mean, I just can't shut him down. I thought I don't want to muzzle the ox, though.
Sure.
But anyway, so Mark, I'm excited about this. Now, this is number 81, I believe, episode.
Mm-hmm.
We started this about a year and a half ago. We had 3 downloads the first day, and Rob looked at me. Well, I listened to it, and I said, I did. My wife listened to it. And he said, but it's important that we've got to be consistent. Every Tuesday, it's got to drop. And it's going to grow, and it's going to grow. So now we're in over 400 cities and 45 countries.
Wonderful.
And it's neat how just faithfulness, and he's been such an encouragement on that. But Mark, let's start with your story. How did you get into the business you are today and the multitude of things in which you do?
Well, for me, most business owners, I think, start in some type of sales career. Mine was not that different. Started working for AT&T after the housing crash. I had grown up in blue collar and spent many summers in Virginia building homes and had a small construction business for a time. And after the market crashed in 2008, I was approached by a leader in a regional company for wireless sales. And he had asked me if I had ever considered wireless sales and getting into that side of things. And At the time, no. So I did, looked at it, was a great opportunity, came in and learned a lot about sales, which was the real foundation of all the real success I had in sales. Was that I quickly learned that sales is really just serving. I had started at AT&T and thought I was doing quite well after about 6 months, and my boastfulness was a flag of sorts of how much I probably was actually failing. And I had a great person, one of the first mentors in my life, Cliff. Still great friends to this day. Cliff was the first guy to take me under his wing and say, "Hey, I know you think you're doing really good, but can I offer a different perspective?" And he said, "Let me show you the sales board. See, you may be moving a lot of product, but you're not making any money." And he said, "You're not serving anybody if you're not a good steward over over the things that you've been entrusted." Wasn't making the company any money and wasn't making any money myself. And he said,
But you were busy, right?
I was busy. I was busy doing nothing really, just moving stuff. Just what are you doing? I don't know, but we're moving it. We're moving it good. We're moving a lot of it. And he showed me that true good sales. He introduced me to true good sales. Everybody wins. Everybody should win in a good transaction. You can't be left with nothing, and that's not a fair trade. But you also can't take from the customer. You can't. It's got to be fair. It's got to be a good deal for them. It's got to be fair to you. And he introduced me to being more humble about my career, and so I started to do things differently. And when I realized that numbers do actually matter, they matter they matter in churches, they matter in companies. That if we're not financially successful, we're not going to help anybody. We're not going to get people. And as simple as phones were back then, you're not going to help people get phones if it's not a good deal. And you're not going to be able to work in any career and provide for your family if you don't make something. But I found the greatest value to doing that was integrity, that, creating a great transaction, that they were getting something really good. They were getting a good deal, and they were getting a good product, and you were getting compensated fairly, where it made sense.
If somebody is feeling like they got a good deal, they're going to go tell other people, right?
Right.
It's kind of like a church. If yeah, you don't have to go out and advertise too much. If you're feeding the sheep, they'll go out and tell other sheep, "Hey, you know, here's what's happening over here. Here's how we're
Right.
being fed.
Yeah,
Come and join
and
our herd."
yeah, but I learned, at the first, because that's the kind of if that can be taken wrong in some
Okay.
ways, right? Because that can almost come across as the same approach as a car salesman feel, that sticky icky, where, oh yeah, but what I learned is that you got to be committed but not attached, right? You're not attached to the money. The money will come.
Right.
The money will come. Of course, they're going to go tell people. But if I ever went into a deal or a transaction thinking, oh, this guy's going to feed me some more deals, so I better hook him up, that's
Yeah,
the
that
wrong
won't work.
motivation. That's not, and I learned you got to put first things. We were talking about this before, but that's putting first things first. Just trusting that you will always be blessed, like the thimbles. I'm always have more than I need. People are always coming to me. I'm always getting business. Why? Because that's what happens when you take care of people, when you just go and serve. And it's not your number one priority. You're not living in fear. And so after I started to have tremendous success after that transition out of not having success, I was became one of the top salesmen out of 220 reps. I was always in the top, and they were going to close one of their stores. I petitioned them not to, and I say, "Hey, I see what's going wrong in the store. I'd like an opportunity to run it." And they gave it to me, and I pitched them on a proposal that was very market driven, very sales driven. And 2 months into that, we had already beaten the best month they've ever had in 7 years. We were on track to have the best quarter they've had ever. And they sat me down at a meeting. They said, "So it looks like your plan is working." And I had to confess that just like Napoleon in war, the best plan for war is as soon as war begins, there is no plan. And that's what happened to my plan. My plan went right out the window. And they said, "Well, then what is going on down there? Why are you having so much success?" And I said, "I realized there was no way we were going to have the money or door dings to turn the numbers I wanted to turn. Nothing I had planned was going to work. So what we did instead was we started to pull up every account that we had access to, which was tens and hundreds of thousands of accounts, and just find where they were wasting money and just say, hey, what can we do to save them money? And there were plans were outdated. This was back in the day where everything wasn't unlimited, and we
I
just
remember
started.
those
Yeah,
days.
where you had to really, how many texts are you sending a month? How many phone calls are you making? And but there was a lot of plan changes, and so people were being charged hundreds over costs, and we would just go in and say, just start updating, to call people and say, hey, there's a better plan. We can save you $30 a month. And 7 out of 10 of the changes that we would make, we would start earning trust. They were like, oh, this guy, they know what they're talking about. They care about saving us money. They would come down and just say, hey, we need a new phone. Can you guys help us with a new phone? So we actually didn't have to do anything for new opportunities with phones. They were just starting to come down, and now the store that was 39 out of the lowest door dings became one of the most profitable stores in the whole region. And we continued that track, had the best year ever by August. And but a great example of how our service was the secret, not sales. Um, because service created all the sales you could ever handle. It happened when I was working in one store, and this changed everything for me, Don. Is I was working in the Warrenton store, and a lady came in.
Missouri?
Warrenton, Virginia.
Virginia,
Yes, yeah.
okay.
Well, one of the beautiful. And Warrenton's just gorgeous.
Yeah, I've been there. I just was,
It's like Lynchburg in many ways.
yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And a lady came in, and it was a heavy packed store. It was in around Christmas time, and around as the weather was getting cold, and she I called her attention. I was available, called for her attention so she could come to the counter. She literally fell on the counter. It looked like she was carrying 1,000-pound purse, and the weight of the world was written all over her face. And she pulled out her cell phone bill. She's like, I have no idea. She says to me, I have no idea how I'm going to pay this. This is just, it's been crazy, and I don't even know how I'm going to cover this. And I looked at it, and at the time, this amount of bill is unheard of, but it was a $500 bill. And this was back when it was only calling and texting. There weren't really that many data phones. And I looked down, I was like, oh, and I love doing stuff like this. I was like, oh, I get to call in all the favors. This is going to be fun. This is great. I get to show you
Well, you're
how
serving.
good. Yeah.
You
And
know, the
it's
whole
fun to serve.
attitude is serving
Yeah.
that person.
Yeah, well, solving problems,
Yeah,
this like
problem
as a
solving.
pastors, you see this all the time. People come to you broken, you connect them with the scriptures and the Lord and the gospel. That that's really what we're after. That's what we want. We want our problems. That's why we go to we go to the church, we go to the hospital of the church, right? We want to be healed. We want to find our peace there. And I could tell this was deeper than a cell phone bill. And I looked down, I was like, don't worry about this. We're going to get this all taken care of.
Man,
And
that makes me feel good. Yeah, I wish you would have been my rep back in the day.
yeah, so I start hammering through this. I'm calling, I'm backdating a rate change, so it's going to credit her forward. I'm getting credits for overages applied, and I'm working this everything I've got for about 20 minutes. And while I'm on the phone with service and getting some extending circumstances accommodated and approved, I just say to her, and I tell her, I was like, this is your actual bill. This is what you're going to have to. She just like lights up. And I said to her, I said, so, so you seems like you had a crazy month. I mean, your minute usage tripled. You went from like a couple hundred to 1,300 minutes. I'm like, sounds like a crazy month. And I always remember this. She said, yeah, you could say that. So this bill was from August. I think we were in October at this point. She goes, in the middle of the month, my two sons were swimming across the lake, and one of them couldn't swim anymore and started to go down. And my other son tried to save him and realized that there was no way that he could save them unless they were both going to drown. And he had to let his other brother go in order to survive. And he was in the water for hours after rescuers got there because he just couldn't leave. So I've been dealing with that for the past couple weeks, and you can say it's been a crazy month. That's when I realized, Don, I was like, you know what? Everybody who walks in that door is not mad about a bill or a cell phone. When you're helping people solve problems, it may seem like a cell phone, but it's really not. It's life. It's life. You really don't know what's going on with people. You really don't.
You were given an opportunity over a bill, and then she began to share the story. And I can see you. We're not video yet, but I can see the emotional impact just in your face when you told that story. So no matter if you're being given an invoice, and in fact, Mark, I have to tell you this. Me and cell bills, I don't always understand them. And so I was with Sprint for 30 years. Okay. I had a construction business. I remember when the guy came out and he said, hey, Don, because I was always telling him, I said, I don't know how to budget for cell bills. I mean, I got to talk to these people. I can't just say, call me back on a hard line. Okay. He said, well, Nextco's come out with like a walkie-talkie. And so that cut my bill in half. Now I didn't have customers do that, but, we were building hotels. So we had 150 people on the job site every day, and you had to get a hold of people.
Nextel was.
Yep. So I said, well, I tell you what, we'll put a sign on our trailer, our construction trailer, and why don't you just give me free service for a year? He said, okay, done, because it was a new pioneer. But, he brought a solution. And I think, Mark, what happens so often when I get on the phone, because, it went from a Sprint, and I was a big dog, I had my own rep, and he'd call and, hey, I'm going to give you a free phone this month and do all this, to go into T-Mobile. And whenever businesses say they merge, it's usually somebody bought the other one out. And so I would call, and it's like nobody knew what was going on. Okay, how do I do this? My bill's not right. And so one day I took it out on a person in the Philippines. I couldn't hardly understand him. I thought I heard chickens in the background, and I thought, what has this gotten to? And I just said, and I questioned her competency about even being able to take care of the problem. Now, God convicted me big time. I mean, she was just the low totem pole. She was the rep. The other guys were sitting in Kansas City in big offices and everything. And I'm taking out this poor lady, and God just convicted me. I said, ma'am, I want to apologize. Will you please forgive me for taking out my hostilities on you and my frustrations? And she paused a moment. She said, I've never had anybody do that. I'm used to being abused every day, all day long, and all I'm trying to do is make a thing. And so God taught me something there, that when you mess up, you can fess up. You can go tell your prayers at night and say, oh, God, forgive me for being mean on the phone today, but that's not helping the horizontal. Our vertical and our horizontal in order to get a picture back in the old days on that. But you've hit a really great principle here, that no matter what somebody brings to you, you have the power to bless them. You have the power to curse them. You have the power to lift them up. You have the power to put them down. And we've got to be careful with our words. Words are important.
Yep.
And I really appreciate you bringing that factor within this. But this wasn't in the script today, but your company's called Orange Sock.
That's right.
And I want you just to briefly tell the story about where you came up with Orange Sock.
Well, see, that's interesting because this lady, I'm glad I wasn't sure we were going to talk about that because this lady at the store, my response to her after she shared that with me is that at this point it was 3.5 years after the experience that defined the name of Orange Sock. So the timing of it was divine because God had brought me through a walk that allowed me to connect with her in a way that only somebody who's experienced true tragedy and true sorrow, grief would know. And it kind of, brought a lot of purpose to, the my Gethsemane, if you will. But Orange Sock is named after Private First Class Luke Joshua Brown, who is my little brother. He was 82nd Airborne. He was 6'4", and the stories about Luke now are so grand that my children thinks he can pick up a house and fly and do pretty much anything. But Luke, tragically, we lost Luke to an accident while he was enlisted and stationed at Fort Bragg, and had I don't normally share this, but I feel inspired to share this now. But normally I don't share this part, but Luke died at the hands of his platoon sergeant. He was mishandled and forced into and restricted in a way that he was not able to breathe. And when they had brought him back to base, his life had passed. And those men were tried of manslaughter and convicted and dishonorably discharged. But, I don't normally share that, but I think it's important here as we talk about biblical truths, maybe,
Yes.
because, this was in '08 and I'm trying to remember the timeline. Things are pretty fuzzy in situations like that. I was probably in a recovery mode for years.
Right.
But I think it was 6 to 9 months after that they were being tried. And I made the decision to go down and confront them. And so I did. And I know that at least one of my other brothers did so as well, but we did it on our own, individually, as I think we felt. And my other brother was on a mission trip actually in Germany at the time, so he actually wasn't home for the funeral. But we ended up coming. He chose to stay and finish, which was has its own testimony there. But I ended up going down to the funeral and I confronted them, and I frankly forgave them face to face and let them know that as far as they and I were concerned, they had no wrongdoing that needed forgiveness from me.
That's
Because,
a powerful thing for I've dealt with situations in my life and being a pastor and being a seminary professor now for 19 years. I said, don't let forgiveness is a powerful thing. You really can't be set free yourself. That situation just takes rental space in your head, and you've got to forgive, even though in the hardest situations. And I'm sure that was difficult, but
well, here's what happened for me is that I was sitting at his funeral, and it was about a week or so after because they had a lot of arrangements. Luke had a lot of people that loved him. He had thousands. The church was full. The foyers, every overflow full. People were outside because we were at maximum capacity. We were surprised. We actually didn't expect that. And I after bringing his casket into the chapel, I sat on stage. I was going to speak, and I also sing. So I was going to sing.
oh, I should have had you bring your guitar and sing, or
I can't do it with a guitar. I'm still working on with the piano, but I love
okay.
singing. I love the power of song. And I was sitting on stage and I had a divine enlightenment. I felt like the Holy Spirit entered my mind, and I saw my life in two places. And on the left, I saw my life pretty bad. I saw my marriage and divorce. I saw kids estranged. I saw addiction. I saw darkness. And on the right, I saw joy. I saw light. I saw a beautiful family, a great career. And I knew that I knew this was a defining moment, that there's not a lot of decisions that in your life you need to get right. God has a lot of grace and he builds that grace into your world. But this I knew was something I better get right. And I just decided that I was going to move on. I was going to let this go. This wasn't going to haunt me. And I even spoke it out loud. We talk about the spoken word, right? Your
Yes,
words, right?
yes.
I even said it out loud. My sister, beside me at the time, she even heard me and asked what I had said, and I repeated it. But I said it out loud. I said, "This is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to me," and almost affirming what God had given me, that I'm in line with what you this is not going to be a trial for me. This is going to be a receiving of a gift. And so going down to forgive these men was just a part of that path. And I might not have known it then, but I believe the absence of resentment and anger and bitterness and hatred uh, allowed me for this woman, when she walked up to that store counter and fell on it, probably more spiritual than physically, and she shared her experience. Now, you shared about empathy, right? This was empathy. This was empathy. I had lost, I have grieved, I have suffered, and I knew there was a victory. And I reached out and I touched her hand after she shared this, because I really didn't know what else to do. And I even prayed.
That was the best thing to do.
I mean, I'm telling you, powerful, man. I was just guided in this moment. I put my hand on her hand. I said, "Ma'am, I have no idea what you feel like to lose a son. But my mom lost a son about 3 years ago. And I know it's rough. And I know that it's going to be okay. I can't say how, I can't say when, I can't say, but I know it's going to be okay. There's a light there." And she looked at me and her whole spirit took flight. I mean, she looked like she lost 100 pounds in a moment. And because the spirit came down into this meeting and this little conversation, and it was, Don, it was incredible. It
It
was
wasn't in a
busy.
sanctuary.
It was
It wasn't
busy. It's
it
chaos.
wasn't at a Bible study.
And
It was
man, right there,
in the
two
marketplace.
people, just having it was like a mini church. And she lifted up, she said, "Really?" I was like, "Yep." Well, yeah. So to bring it back, I know we've got time, but so Luke used to wear orange socks. All wore orange socks. Luke had a very powerful spirit. He would dye his hair lime green. He was the loudest kid in the room. He's the funniest guy any of you would ever meet. And I look forward to the day of salvation where we all get to see each other, and I'll introduce you to Luke Brown. He was one of a kind. And my son now carries his name. My son is named after Luke. So it's Luke number 2.0. And it's crazy because Luke 2.0 is literally 70% the personality of my brother. That's like they met each other in heaven or something. I don't know how that works, but it's amazing. God gave me another time, another round. But anyway, so he used to do the turkey trot in Fredericksburg with my mom, and he'd
Okay.
wear orange socks. So we all wear orange socks every year. We do the turkey trot. And every year I asked my mom, I was like, "Why are we out here in this freezing cold? I'd rather be sleeping in on Thanksgiving." And we do it every year. We do it with my mom because he used to do it with my mom. And when I got into merchant services, it didn't take long to realize how bad this business was. Unregulated. Some people in the business call it the last Wild West.
Yes.
And I thought about my brother Luke. I thought about the incredible integrity that Luke Brown had, character, honesty, He lived life by a different code. He did what was right. He spent 30 days in the brig while in the service because he wouldn't rat out his part of his platoon buddies when they were out past curfew. And it's because he just won't do it. That was Luke's character. He was one of the most integrity driven people you ever meet in your life. So when I got to know this crooked business, and I was like, well, because some of the people I had trained me who are still in the business work in the area. Some of the people on their team were showing me how they forge documents, how they change pricing when people don't know it, how you get people into leases without them knowing. Oh, we call it a terminal placement program. I'm like, they don't know that they're signing a lease and they can't get out of it. It's auto renewing. Yeah. No, we call it a terminal placement program. I'm like, okay. After that, the Lord did what I couldn't do because I was very loyal, and he separated our partnership. And I went back and I said, well, now what do I do? I was like, well, now I start on my own. And that's when I said, you know what? We're going to follow the path of people like Luke. We're going to be different. And that's when we started to do things that were all service driven. We did no leases, refused to do any leases. To this day, I've only signed 2 leases in 13 years. And it was only because that really was the best situation. We don't do any termination fees. Never have. So in 13 and a half years, not a single merchant has ever paid a terminal, a cancel fee. We do handshake contracts. So one of the contracts I is with Churchill Downs. They purchased Colonial Downs, and that's a handshake contract. And when they got acquired by Churchill Downs, Colonial Downs Racetrack got acquired by Churchill Downs in 2022 in a $43 billion acquisition. The senior director of finance called me up. She goes, just want to make sure I understand this right. You don't have any termination fees? And I was like, yeah, we don't do that. She goes, you've got to be the only person we've ever worked with ever who doesn't want to charge us a termination fee. I was like, well, if we're not good, we'll help you pack your bags. And she was like, oh no, not only are we not going to cancel, but we're going to stay with you probably forever. We love you a lot. But that's integrity. That's what integrity. Yes. That's what integrity does. It's like you don't have to fight to earn business. There's lots.
You're not taking.
I don't need to back you into a corner. We don't need to force anything. We work together because it's good. It's good. It's good business. And so that's where Orange Sock came from. And now we do a lot of stuff like that. So thank you for asking and allowing me to share that. Luke's my favorite part of my story. I love.
Well, I have a huge heart for the military, and I teach at Liberty University, and I teach in the chaplains department, and also I teach in a doctoral department on leadership. And we just did we endorse about 500 military chaplains through LBF. We're a high trainer for military chaplains. In fact, I was asked to come and share with a team from the Pentagon about how we're doing online training and preaching. I remember when the colonel came into the room and I hadn't got my doctorate yet. I was a little nervous, but she said, I want to see an example how you can do homiletics labs online and it'd be effective. I said, well, please turn to the screen. And one of the assignments was, here was a Army chaplain sitting on a tank with a squad of about 6 guys right there. And he did a 5-minute devotion before they went out into the battlefield. And she goes, oh my goodness. I think she went to Harvard maybe. And she goes, my introduction would have been that long. And she goes, so how did you come up with this? I said, well, just thinking about the situation, those guys need to go into the field and they don't have time to do a 45-minute sermon and do all this. How can they just get down to the point? I said, hey, you, look, do. It can be just like that. And she said, well, when I was in theater, I think she was in Iraq, and she had to do a radio sermon, 5-minute one to everybody in theater. And she said, I wished I would have had this class. And so she went back and highly recommended our homiletics course, and it's amazing what God has done. Our director, uh, retired Colonel Steve Keith, is we have actually a center there, but we have an annual conference. And I was thinking about you last week and about orange socks. I wonder if Mark's got any orange socks. I wonder if
We
he's
used
got.
to hand them out to every new partner, and the charity fell through, so we hadn't found a new partner, but we wanted a charity partner that's somebody that we that does nonprofit work with orange socks. So, but
Well,
yeah.
you know, I just thought it was amazing. But we had a psychiatrist come in and talk about mortal injury. Okay, for an entire day pre-conference, and I got so much out of him. I mean, he's like 80 years old, maybe not quite that old. Sorry, Dr. Boring, if I got that wrong. But anyway, he's got a lot of energy, and he's in this whole new field outside of post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic healing. And all these chaplains are sitting there. Uh, the suicide rate in the military is unbelievable. We've lost more soldiers, airmen, Marines, and things through suicide than we have actually combat in the last 5 years, and all the things that happen. And so that's why I was thinking about you. I thought, I should have thought of if he has any orange socks and, tell the story. So I told the center director there, I said, hey, I got this guy I'm going to interview that has a company called Orange Sock. I'm going to get into that a little bit. So thank you for sharing that, because that's important. You know, the purpose of this podcast was to introduce you, and I have a lot more questions to ask, but you know what? I think it's kind of been accomplished in the fact of them getting to know you,
Right.
that
And
you have a servant's heart, that Jesus, I mean, goodness gracious, servant leadership is taught as a Christian commodity, when in fact it can be a secular as well. But I don't I don't know, in my own life, I don't have a duplex God. I don't do secular and then spiritual. I just don't do that. I mean, this is who I am in Christ. And I don't want to be offensive, but at the same time, I don't want to be offensive to Christ either. And just being able to share. But when you look at these things, I have a sense that you're somebody that can be trusted to, you do a lot of leadership things and other things we haven't even gotten into. But uh, how would they, how could they use like this point of sale? Because so many churches now, even small churches, are taking their tithes in this way. They're um, selling products. I mean, all kinds of different things. Can you speak to that just for a moment? How that could help?
payments is a interesting world because it's kind of like insurance, like car insurance, where you don't ever really become an expert of it, but you know when you're paying too much. And when you're paying too much, you go back in and you try to become an expert real quick, try to find a great solution, put something new in place, and then you come out and you're still not sure if you actually did get set up right.
Right.
And you only are going to know when you have a car wreck. And you don't have a car wreck that often.
Yeah.
And you can't go
Then you
around
start reading the policy and going, "Oh no, I
like,
should."
wait a minute. What do you mean I don't get this covered? Like, so payments can kind of be like that. But it doesn't have to be complicated. When I looked at like how I could serve today and how we could translate that into everybody that's listening and try to just strive to have this be of most value, I think the simple answer is taking payments digitally increases two things very easily. It makes it very easy to make payments, donations, and it increases the amount that people want to pay because it's easy. I'm not attached, just like I said with the business deals. It's not about the money. It's about the message. And the message that you want to give people, whether it's church or business, is that hey, we are grateful for your contribution. I'm grateful that you want to spend money here. that you want to donate money here. That's the message. And payments, just like we were talking to Chick-fil-A, what the gentleman here,
Yes.
talking about Chick-fil-A, this guy he runs a lot of leadership, guys listening, a lot of leadership over the teams and the upper management, entrepreneurial, franchisors. Uh, he heads a lot of that. And talking about the culture of no Sunday work, he shared that it's a $1 billion loss to not operate on Sunday and how it's never been a conversation. Just like I heard Costco, the $1.50 hot dog, one of the biggest arguments they've ever had at Costco. I've heard, this is rumored, that
I actually saw a feed on it last night.
yeah, it's like, this is the culture of Costco. This is our culture. The culture that's created inside your parish, inside the churches, should be that of gratitude and simplicity to donate. That we're grateful. We don't squander your money. We don't squander it away in fees and cumbersome processes. And that if we're going to use this system so it's easy for you to support the church that you want to support, which is maybe us or whatever, then that's the recommendation I would have, is that is what you do. Now, that may be accomplished in about 3 different ways. Super simple. You might be using a software that already does it. Great. Do that if it feels right. And I also encourage you to pray over every decision. Pray over it. If it feels right, you'll be guided to. The other is
I like that.
It's a standalone solution, something that you can just bring in. Could be a square. Orange Sock is one of the very first providers of clover in the country. We've been providing it since June of 2013, and I believe it started in 12. I think it was August or September of 2012. So we're experts at it, but Orange Sock is also one of the only providers that does not require you to process your payments with us for us to help you. We have consulting services that are very affordable, where in 15 minutes we will give you some advice at no cost. It's valued at $100. Or if you would like something more robust, just to say, hey, what do we even do? Orange Sock will come in and provide a analysis and give you a form on what we think is best for you that you can take for a low fee. So that's also a very good option. I don't know anybody else that does that. We really strive to be a consulting firm, which is why it's not really about contracts. It's about,
Guidance.
the content. Yeah, guidance. That's good. So, but the second option is a standalone solution, and where you have a terminal or something like that. And then the third option, I think, would be kind of like a web-based option where people could go on and do their anything to do with your website or donate somewhere else. Whatever you do, it should just be simple and easy. Some people think about using a Square, PayPal. Sure, good. And after that, and this is in the book that's on my website, 27 Secrets to Cutting Your Credit Card Fees, monitor it. You may not need to do it monthly. You may not need to do it quarterly, but a year at the least, you should have someone who can total all your fees and all your process payments in your system to just make sure that it makes sense.
Right.
It makes sense. You shouldn't have to change every year. But once you kind of know what to look for, which takes just steady at the beginning, and then then you'll know when something's off. You'll know when your insurance seems high. But it's like insurance. Once you set it right and you have it built into your system right, support your parish right, shouldn't need to be changed very often. And I actually thought about this on the way over. I normally have a $95 fee for any type of analysis. I will do that for anybody who's on this call. I will do any of that for free. We'll do that no cost. And that's basically an hour of work. So and it doesn't require you to work with us. We can just, well, I'm using Square, or I'm using this software. Can you? So I will do that for anybody who hears this podcast.
Wow, we'll make sure we have that. Thank you for that gift to church leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my heart in this whole podcast is that I want to share things, and I want my guests to share things. You've done a masterfully job doing that, and we appreciate that offer to do that. So, church leaders, if you're in the car, uh, you just better pull over and make a note or whatever you need to do, because that's been a real frustration for me. In fact, I've kind of gotten this QR thing. Okay, at our church at Thomas Road, there's QR squares on the back of the seats. So you can use that for a lot of things. What's happening this week? A financial gift. So when the plates are coming around, some people still like the plates, and that's fine. Well, others can just hit that right there and do their giving. They have a box in the back. I mean, instead of just saying, we're only going to take an offering this way and that's it. But also, you can hit that QR code and have the sermon notes come up on your phone or your iPad. I mean, it's really good use. In fact, uh, I've done over 200 funerals, Mark, in my ministry, and so I turned 69 next month, and I told my wife, I said, maybe it's time for us to kind of start planning about, so we don't have to get a call and say, well, Don's been killed in a car wreck, and you have 3 days to get pictures together, and where are we going to bury him, or what are we going to do all that? And I don't have to do that either. That, to me, that's love. That's a solution that we need to do. And so uh, I said, now, I go to these graveyards and I just walk around and look what the epitaphs are, and I go, man, that's boring. That's the same. Good husband, good father, loving grandfather. And I said, I want to say something about Jesus. But man, it's expensive if you have a monument and you have to put the whole plan of salvation on it. So my thought was, I'm just going to put my name, date of birth, date of death, and then I'm going to put a QR code, and they're going to go to that QR code, and I'm going to talk to them. Hey,
you talking?
I said, I just want to tell you the most important decision you can ever make is to know Jesus. And I said, your eternal destination. But, we get into that, but it's so hard sometimes because, we'll use PayPal or we use something like that. Well, a lot of places now say, would you like to contribute extra $1.42 for the charges on there? And you get into that, and it's, you got to go to an expert. That's why you're a subject matter expert in this area, and that's why I had you on.
Yep.
You don't just do the things, you are a subject matter expert in it. And that's what pastors and church leaders in general need to understand. You can't know everything. And if you do, you know nothing. Okay. So I could research life insurance, but why don't I go to somebody I trust and a subject matter expert? Or my car? You trust all these people, but the person I look for is the servant. And that's what I see in your life and in our conversation today. And I appreciate that.
I've been blessed. I have a lot of really good people who have served me so well. And everything I do is because of the way these people have demonstrated. And one of them is Thomas Blackwell, who has been a leader. And I just plug his book. We talked about language, but The Liberty of Our Language Revealed by Thomas Blackwell is one of the most biblically Christ aligned books on the language that we use in our servitude. And he is a internationally sought after best-selling author, speaker, and coach. And my youngest son, Thomas, is named after Thomas. So it's not just a plug. Thomas, I want to give credit to the men that have made me who I am. And that learning to serve first in the language is Thomas, man. He gave me a lot of that. But thank you.
Well, that's great. Well, listen, Mark, thank you for sharing your insight and heart today. This has been a rich and necessary conversation. It's challenged my heart. Sometimes we think we can be a blessing to someone else, but you've hit some points in my life today that has been convictional and helping me get back on the path. And and what, it's not that I'm living out here in sin and doing all these big sinful things, but, uh, there's some people say it's little sin, that's big sins. No, they're all the same in God's eye. They all had different consequences, obviously, but God forgives, but sometimes we have some consequences. So don't go out and rob a store today and then say, well, I feel sorry I did it. Go back and give the money back. You're going to go to jail, okay? And but you can learn some things there too. But God will forgive you. But this has been a great conversation, and it puts some wind under my wings about the fact that we don't live in a secular and a spiritual world. If we're in Christ, there's no difference between the two. We've got to be the same wherever we are. We have to look for these opportunities that God brings. And 1 Corinthians 10:31, one of my favorite verses, whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Let him have the outcome. We sit and ruminate all night about a decision, and we just get frozen in place with fear. And Christ is not wanting us to live there. And so another verse is 2 Corinthians 8:21. We aim at what is honorable, not only in the Lord's sight, but also in the sight of man. Healthy systems protect ministries and leaders alike. We all need guardrails. You can learn more about Orange Sock in the show notes. If this episode has helped you, please subscribe. Rate and share Church Leadership in Focus with other pastors and church leaders. Thank you for listening. I'm Don Hicks, and I'll see you next time right here on Church Leadership in Focus.
Hi, this is Trish Hicks. I am the host of Strength for the Journey podcast. I'm proud to be a financial sponsor of Church Health Solutions and the Church Leadership in Focus podcast. I encourage you to be a sponsor as well. My podcast, Strength for the Journey, brings you spiritual encouragement and devotional thoughts while pointing you to God's Word. You can find me on strengthforthejourney.buzzsprout.com. God bless you.
The Church Leadership in Focus podcast is sponsored by Church Health Solutions. You may contact the host, Don Hicks, by email at don@churchhealthsolutions.com. Don welcomes ideas on church leadership topics from you that may be used in the future episodes of Church Leadership in Focus podcast. I invite you to share our link with others you know in church leadership and on your social media. Be sure to tune in for our next weekly episode. May the Lord Jesus give you wisdom and guidance as you lead and equip your church.